Top of the morning to you. What makes that top-notch, high-quality, incredible homemade lumber? Come in here and I'll show you a few things for you to look for to make sure your lumber is as good as it gets. Hope y'all doing good this morning. I need to cut some floor joists for the house to go on top of them beams. I'm gonna cut full-size 2x8s. I want them as strong as I possibly can, as I do with every other bit of my lumber that I cut. First thing we want to look at is the straightness of the log. Of course, any bow in a log, you're going to have pressure and tension on that inside of that bow. That's going to be pressure. Of course, just pulling that way, you're going to have pressure in between that wood. Back side of it, you're going to have tension. The wood fibers are stretched tight that way. Straighter the log, the better. Secondly, we want to look at are these growth rings. Something like you see here. The tighter the growth rings, the denser the wood, the stronger the wood, the more stable the wood. I'll bring you in here and show you this. And if you look right here, all these growth rings are very uniform. But this tree is 17 inches in diameter. It's right around 50 years old. And that is 12 feet up from the butt of where it was cut off. So we're looking at a pretty old tree right here with very uniform growth rings that are very close together. That's gonna be the strongest lumber you can cut. So let's get this log on the mill and make some of that incredible homemade lumber. And the third thing I'd like to discuss is making those cuts down this log and getting your taper right on your log. So what I like to do to try to get that as straight as possible, parallel with the growth rings of this tree, I use these log stops. Pretty true and flat from one end to the other down this log. I use those, I raise those up as high as I can to get them as close to the top of the log as I can to judge on where I need to set my taper and lift, using the toe boards, to lift the log up and get it right. Of course, I don't like to raise it all the way up and get the top perfectly flat because that ain't the way the log grows. It ain't flat on one side and the other side tapers to it. You're gonna be cutting across your growth rings and you're gonna try to avoid that as best as you can. The goal here is to have the pith level on each end of the log. That way you're cutting parallel to pith is parallel to growth rings. Get that pith level on both sides. Some use a tape measure. My technique is using those log stops to estimate. It does not have to be exact. I just like to get it as close as I can. That lumber, that much better. Another thing you have to pay very close attention to in a log when trying to cut that incredible home-sawn, homegrown lumber is this mess right here. Let me see if I can get you in here close. See that? It's called shake. It's called tree shake. It's a bacterium when that tree's growing that gets in that growth ring, and when cut down, it separates that growth ring all the way down. It's on this end also. If you ever see that perfect ring pop up on the end of a log, sometimes it's right around the juvenile wood. Most of the time it is, but sometimes it gets out here. If you see that in your log, I can just about guarantee you that if you cut that log, that lumber will look good. It don't matter if you trim the ends of it and you say, oh, look, I got out of it. When that lumber dries, it will bust down that growth ring. The only thing you'll get out of that log is a bad attitude and a little firewood. So if you want to cut some firewood, chop it up. I've had a lot of this in pine trees, and I've had a lot of it. If you've seen some of my other videos, while I'm cutting cypress for my house, I get a lot of it in those cypress logs also. It really starts to aggravate you. Not so bad when you are getting your logs for free. And sometimes I do get those kind of logs, but when you're paying for that log and you get that in your wood, that right there will make you spit and cuss a little bit, kick a little dirt. Be on the lookout for that. Don't waste your time cutting that log because your lumber will split. And last but not least, be on the lookout for knots. I'm trying to get that sun out y'all's eyes. For knots in those logs. A knot here, a knot there isn't that bad unless it's one of those really big knots. That weakens the structural integrity of that lumber tremendously. If that board is gonna break, it will break right there. That is the weak spot of your lumber. Now, small knots, that is not gonna do a whole lot. It'll be fine. Try to find logs that don't have so many knots in them. And I know sometimes it's hard to do. Well, that's my tips of getting that incredible home cut, home milled lumber. Now that we have everything set up, I'm gonna get you set up on time lapse. We're gonna blast through this log. I'll show you the finished product here in just a second. I'm gonna get this cutting head back, and what I want y'all to pay attention to right here is that board that I'm about to cut. Pay attention, or what little tension to no tension that there is. If it has tension, you'll notice your board pull one side to the other, and when your lumber dries, of course, that's which way your wood's gonna wanna move. As you've seen in that pass right there, that board did not move. That's what you're looking for when you're cutting lumber. That board right there, when dried, will stay straight and strong. Sleeping on the job. Old Jake just decided to take him a nap. I guess when you're his age, you're about like Uncle Si on Duck Dynasty. If you're tired, see a good place to take a nap, sleep. There we go, ladies and gentlemen. 10 full-size 2x8 pine. This is what I call incredible homemade lumber. There was no tension while I was cutting. There are no knots in this. We have these cut. We have them properly stacked so the air can move through these things and the drying process can begin. We'll let these air dry for a couple days, then we'll be putting them in the kiln. Once these things are dry, they are gonna make some very strong floor joists for my house. And man, I can't wait to get them things in there. I'm ready to get that house done. Still got a good ways to go, but one nail at a time, we getting it done. I just want to say God bless and thank y'all for stopping in.